Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love or just saw, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic, clown magic. Who knows? I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always on this lovely Sunday morning by my friend and co-host,
Alex Dandino.
Oh, man, welcome back. I was telling you a little before the show, I am completely fucked up in my head.
Right.
Because of our massive pod undertaking for October.
Yeah.
Which I think we've mentioned, but in October, we're going to do every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, every Friday the 13th movie, plus a couple that are in theaters, and then on Halloween Day, we're going to culminate in Freddy vs. Jason. And I was like, this is cool. This will be no problem.
Nope.
And so just the
Huge
fact
problem.
of watching all the Nightmare movies, and I've been recording them out of sync, so I've started to record a bunch of them. I was like, I miss my Alex. And secondly, I was like, holy shit, all the nightmares are going to get us like 1 week out of 4. I was like, this was a terrible idea. So much. So yeah, I am like drowning in pod. I was like, I didn't think that I would ever hit a point where it's like, I think I have nothing to say left, but I'm at that point almost. So I'm glad you're back, man. And this one is especially awesome. Oh my God, I didn't even notice. If you watch the video, I have my red balloon in the back.
Oh shit. Nice. Well done. Nice touch.
I'm a subliminal art department guy, man.
Yep.
Okay. So, Alex, we went to the theater this weekend to see It Chapter 2.
I did.
I adored Chapter 1. And as the horror movie voice of the show, a lot of my horror brethren were hating on this movie, right? They hated It 1. Not that scary. It does fall back on jump scares a lot. I think it's kind of the nature of the big studio movies.
Sure.
Because The Conjuring does the same scare a lot, right? Where and the whole Conjuring universe is like absurd with it. Mm-hmm. I think studio execs are like, I want the jump scare. Jesus, give me the jump. It has to feel like a ride.
Right.
So it does suffer from some of that. But what I love about it is you almost never see horror on this scale, right?
No.
This huge, fucking grandiose, epic scale with such amazing production value.
Right.
So I was excited to get back into this world of Derry. What did you think as you were leaving the theater?
Well, I saw it. So I saw it at 10:30 at night because my kid and my wife went to bed. So I was like, well, I'll go check this thing out. And then I walked into the theater.
Like, I have 5 free hours to watch this infinitely long movie.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this. I actually am starting this is Sunday. I went to the theater Friday. I just got back from the movie. We'll get to that. But no, so I went at 10:30 at night, not knowing the length of this film, and I was like, I walked into the theater, I was like, and then at the ArcLight, they give you the little spiel like, hey, welcome to the ArcLight, you're going to see this movie. And then the guy's like, yeah, we have a runtime of 2 hours and 49 minutes. Like, fuck.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a dad now. That doesn't work for me.
This is important. You have no idea the lengths I went to go and see this movie. Like, I walked out of the theater and grabbed like a coffee and a soda. I'm like, I have to like just blast myself with caffeine. But my first impression walking out of the theater was, I have to go to bed. But no, the actual impression I had was that ultimately, I definitely prefer. I think I prefer Chapter 1 to Chapter 2.
Sure.
Leaving the theater, I was impressed by just the fact that it's 10:30. It's 1:30 in the morning when I'm leaving, and I just walked out of a Stephen King adaptation for a movie that is a major studio picture. Like, that's a huge deal. Like, we're sitting here, and like, I don't know if, like, for those of you, I'm sure if you listen to this show, you have seen the original adaptation from the 90s with like
Tim Curry.
Thank you, with Tim Curry. It's like a 4-hour miniseries. Didn't make it to theaters, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's a 4-hour fucking miniseries. This was like a 6-hour movie, really, combined. If you combine Chapter 1. Like, that's
I thought you were just talking about Chapter 2. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Our dad grievances.
That's the worst.
We need naps and bedtime.
That's like the worst part is like, I know I'm getting older and like I clearly like my life has completely changed because I'm like reading like Slash Film Andy Machete's like threatening us with a 6-hour cut and I'm like, no, don't make me watch that whole thing again. But ultimately I walked out. I think I like Chapter 1 better, but just the phenomenal ability to say it was in theaters and I saw it, and that was really, really cool. This is like a Touchstone Stephen King story, and I mean, it's an achievement. No matter what, how you feel about the movie overall, it's an achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think one of the things that I kind of hate how this movie's become a proxy for other things, right? Like, the film critics use this as, this is my chance to show my literary chops and take a lot of shots at Stephen King's writing.
Right.
Which I hate, right? I read so many reviews that talk shit on the book It. I read it. It's really fucking good. It's really fun. But if you don't like that genre of book, fuck off. Yeah. Don't read it, right? Like, I hate them taking these cracks at Stephen King, the writer. It's like, guys, the jury's in. Stephen King won.
Yeah.
We love him. He's great.
Been around since the 70s, guys. No way out of this one.
There's
now.
a lot of other people that are still doing this. Tim Curry in the original It is better than this movie. No. And I'm sorry, I love Tim Curry, but that's not even one of his better roles. No. Like, if you think that original movie holds a fucking candle to the best moments of this series, you're out of your fucking mind. And again, I don't blame Tim Curry in what he did.
Not at all.
It's just a dramatically inferior made-for-TV version of this story.
That is the true issue, is like people who... It's like this. If people are drunk on nostalgia, they're like, "Oh, wasn't it so good?" I'm like, "Was it? Like, really?"
No, and this is the thing. I actually do enjoy it. I think it's fine. But I think what people do is, the clown movie scared me more when I saw it at 4 years old than this one does in my late 20s or 30s or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, you fucking Nimrod. But what I'm saying is, this is what I took away, right? I was actually impressed that they landed this movie, right? I think it's shockingly disjointed. It's way too long.
Yeah.
But if you read the book, all of the A material in the book is in the children's section. Right. The sections of the story where they're kids is way better than when they're adults, right? So they already were fighting this uphill battle, and It 1 became, this huge runaway hit. So it was going to be hard.
Right.
And especially the ending of It, if you remember, all kinds of crazy metaphysical, like, space battling, rapping of tongues.
Like,
it's insane. So I was fascinated to see how they were going to fix that problem, and I think they did a pretty good job. We'll get to that later, but my theory in the movie is, my biggest, because I did really enjoy my time. I didn't find it scary myself, but I didn't find It 1 particularly scary, right? I don't think horror movies I don't have to leave the theater shaking like a junkie to enjoy a horror film, right? I think there's a lot of great things that happen. But I told my mom, and my wife went with me, and I was like, this isn't scary. You know what I mean?
Right.
Later that night, my wife was like, I had a bunch of nightmares about that movie. And same with my mom. She's like, you lied. It was terrifying. So, for some people, it is working on that level.
Look, I am not by any stretch, like, look, since we've started doing pods together is the reason I've gone to the theaters to see horror movies. Other than that,
right?
It's just not one of those things. I either wait for it to be on TV or I don't watch it at all. Like, I'm one of those viewers, like, I like them a lot, but I do generally not like, it's not like one of my go-tos. So I went alone to see this movie, and that is one of those things where I know that I could take, like, I'm not going to take my mom because my mom's a scaredy cat and I love her. But she's scares easily. But, like, it's one of those things where I've tried to convince Andrea over the last year to watch It Chapter 2 because it's not that scary. And she's like, no, it'll scare me. I'm like, it's the way I would always describe it to people is, I'm like, it's not, because my mom asked if, like, she's like, did you see that scary movie? I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's scary. And she's like, well, it's like too scary. I'm like, it's creepy. Like,
it would scare the fuck out of your mom.
Like, it would scare the shit out of my mom. But, like,
what my mom said is that she said I was tense the entire film.
Okay, I was not.
But I do think one of the things about this movie is I think they're so much better at tension building.
Yes.
Than the payoff, right?
Sure.
You sit in this scene, you're like, oh, fuck, something's about to happen. And you get the tension build, and then all of a sudden it turns into like a cartoon jump scare.
Yeah.
Not as good. But them sitting there in dread, I find really good in these movies.
Yeah, the tension building's wonderful, and, like, that is the thing that I think makes the It movies so good, particularly the first one. It was just a different flavor. And, like, again, it's because you're changing actors, you're shifting set. Like, it's the same setting, but it's shifting a little bit. But you also have to shift the tone considerably because it's no longer children who are in danger. It's the adult versions of it. Like, when kids are in danger, when kids are experiencing danger, the tension is almost tenfold because you don't want nobody wants kids to die. That's terrible. Like,
but also you assume a safety for the characters,
Right.
which I think this movie has a little bit of a leg up because we assume now, oh, they can kill any of these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So it lets the movie breathe a little more.
Right.
I think it is weird because you hit on it, right? When it's children facing down their kind of this archetype of all childhood fears in the form of a clown, it works a lot better than adults coming back and staring down the kind of horrors and trauma of their adulthoods, which
Right.
all of the losers seem to have some serious shit going on. And then it's a clown. You're like, okay.
You know,
Well, like mine would be like my it would now be just dressed as like a Comcast customer service guy or something. Be like, no. Yeah.
it's weird. Everyone seems to have serious issues in their adulthood except for Bill Denborough. Like Bill's worst thing is like he writes bad endings but still sells books. Okay.
Still a millionaire, still famous, still has an actress wife. Like, he's all right.
Yeah, his life's great. Literally, everyone comparatively is.
No, Richie's pretty good.
Richie's good.
This is the thing, though. In the book, they talked about the stain of what happens with it as a child. It draws them away from dairy, and they're all exceptionally successful for the most part.
Right.
And I think that's supposed to be as a tactic to keep them away.
Right.
Right? And that's why they have this great... I mean, again, the book has like all these extra kind of layers of weirdness.
Right.
I think in this one, it's like, why would they come back? You're already successful. I would do the exact same thing. Because at the end, Pennywise is like, I'm the eater of worlds. I'm like, you eat like 8 kids every 27 years.
Yeah.
Like, that does not make a world. It's fine. You know, it's fine. Eventually you'll eat dairy and no one needs dairy and it's fine. I'm going to keep being a famous stand-up comedian or whatever.
Right.
Right? Only Beverly, I'm like, she should have left.
Yeah, Bev's the only one who's like,
Yeah.
like she did not have a
Yeah.
great, like her and
Pennywise not as bad as what Bev's dealing with.
her and Mike have considerably terrible lives, like comparatively to the rest of them. Like Mike's life is fine. He's just a librarian. He seems happy. But like, did they leave out?
Does he seem happy?
Well, unfortunately, he remembers everything.
Yeah, it's like he seems pretty fucking miserable.
Yeah,
to
Mike
me.
has like Mike has like the curse of knowledge. But I mean, ultimately, yeah, like the stakes are considerably different, I guess, because they're all adults. And again, I don't know. I felt it was a little less dangerous this time. Maybe.
I mean, in a way, this is my theory to you. Is I think one of the problems with the movie that I had kind of a twofold narrative issue, right? Which is, one, I thought the whole point was supposed to be them coming back and reuniting and forming their bond, right? That by having this close kind of familial bond, we can take on the traumas of the world.
Right.
And I know, again, in the book, they all have to walk around and gain their memories. I didn't like that the losers were constantly separated.
Yeah,
I like the group dynamic.
I had
a lot
an issue
more.
with that a lot too. Like,
Yeah.
that
Then
I
it just
thought
turns
was-
into little vignettes, it felt to me.
Yeah.
Rather than like a narrative.
I had Andre asked me, and I said the middle of the movie is kind of like those choose your own adventure books, but you don't follow the rules of the choose your own adventure books. You like read all the endings, and you just
you do the one and you're like, this sucks. I'm going to go back and choose a better one.
Not even that. You're literally like, I mean, like reading it chronologically, like page by page, and you're like, oh, okay, that's the ending of that. That's it. Like that's kind of how it felt like for an hour in this movie, where all of the kids are trying to find their tokens for the ritual. Is I was just like, I understand. Like I would have cut 2 of those out. Like I don't care about. Like I don't need to know. Like the ones that I want to know about are like Bev and Bill and probably Mike and probably Ben. Like those are the ones that I think are actually like probably fascinating. And then I mean the everything with Richie was actually way more interesting with that little extra wrinkle they threw in there, which I thought was
Right.
cool.
Well, what I would have done, right, I think you're close to what I thought is the easiest way to chop length off this movie. I didn't want any of the kids to come back. I was done with the child losers.
You didn't
and
want,
I think
you didn't want any flashbacks or anything like that?
I don't want any of the childhood stuff, right? Because what they kept doing is these are adults who are permanently stuck fighting their childhood fights.
Right.
I want to see what it looks like with adults fighting their adult fights, right? And then it turns the grief and the memory and the traumas into this kind of dark, secreted past and see how that affects them now, right? By constantly going back, I think it, like you said, you didn't really latch on to the adult losers. And I think it's because they kneecapped the adult losers to just walk us through, it 1.5.
Yeah, kind of.
Because it's funny, because I remember from the book, there are all these like childhood moments, right? Like Ben's on the bridge and he sees the mummy in the frozen tundra and the giant Paul Bunyan.
Right.
And when chapter 1 ended, I'm like, they did a really good job of cutting out some of those scenes that wouldn't have worked as well to me.
Right.
And then I watched this movie. I was like, oh, fuck, they're all here. I was like, they didn't cut him. They saved him for part 2. Like, I don't want to see Richie running from Paul Bunyan.
Right.
I want to see modern day Richie dealing with Pennywise. That was one of the better of the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Stop taking me back to the losers as kids. I want to deal with the losers as adults.
Yeah, there was a lot of reliability on flashback and about like what happened in the past, which is interesting because like so much of the beginning of this movie is about how everyone has forgotten the past, other than like Mike.
Right.
And so when they start coming together and they start remembering things, I don't know. Like it's a weird choice. Like I guess I understand. Like it's the matter of like showing and not telling. Like you want to show the past, not tell everyone. Oh, remember that one time? Like that obviously is bad storytelling. But at the same time, there's another way to do that. I think without having to just film sequences whole out, like the Paul Bunyan sequence.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. I feel like they didn't let the adult losers have the room. And that kind of, like, the prime example of this to me, here's what I would chop out immediately because it adds no value to the film, is Bowers.
Yes. Okay,
He is our big bad at the start of the first movie, right?
Yeah.
And in the book, he has this fascinating journey of Pennywise still is like, I need a human agent. I need you. Gets him out of the asylum.
Right.
Again, they kind of did the zombie friend driving him around. But in this movie, that just kind of happens really briefly. And we don't get anywhere into the psychology of why is this guy been at bay? What has he been dealing with waiting for 27 years? Now the clown's back. What does that do to affect him? We spend almost no time with him.
Right.
He shows up and tries to stab 2 people, and that's it. We kind of just brush over this whole, he's in a zombie Camaro or whatever. I was like, it just felt like, why is this added, right? We don't do enough with Bowers to make him matter.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of the flip side of Mike, right? He also seemingly remembers because he never left,
right?
But everyone thinks he's insane.
Well,
so play with that. Like, if you want to use Bowers, again, cut out all of the flashbacks of Bowers and sit with Bowers now, right? Like, why is there not a scene of him hashing it out with the zombie driver? Why, like in the first one, Pennywise speaks to him through a children's show.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we have gotten that scene, something like that? So Bowers to me becomes a prime example of the future and present being ruined by this reliant on the past material.
Right.
Because I think he's a great character, and I was excited to see him back, but, I mean, fuck, he barely plays in this movie.
Well, yeah, I thought that was
he's there for one mullet joke. That's it.
Yeah. Like, there was something about... There's 2 things I noted that I was just like, this could have been done without, which was, the Bowers, like the Henry Bowers line. I know that's important in the book, but I really think for the purpose of the movie, you can cut it out entirely as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed, and I don't know, this is something that I think is going to start, it's something that I've noticed creeping up in a lot of like horror movies now, is we've talked a lot about on the show, like the line that's blurred between, I mean, the difference between comedy and horror is like, I don't know, 2 seconds. I felt like a lot of things got punctuated by bits and by jokes. And like normally it's, look, if you're going to have Bill Hader in a movie, yes, you should let Bill Hader do what Bill Hader does best. But there are a lot of like sad things, scary things, or just like things in general that I thought should have been taken a little more seriously or like let land a little further as far as like scares go that were instead punctuated by this levity, which I don't think you need in this kind of movie. Like, we all know what movie we're getting ourselves into when we go see it. Like, I don't need anyone to reassure me that everything's going to be okay at the end of the scene.
Well, again, like them joking at the Jade Palace, perfect.
Sure.
Now, Eddie, who is essentially a coward, right? Getting stabbed in the cheek, stabbing a man who he thinks he stabs in the heart, and then slowly walking out and doing a mullet joke.
Yeah.
That doesn't land for me.
Well, it didn't.
But then this is like the debatable moment, right? At the very end, you're facing a gigantic spider version of the clown.
Exactly.
But this is the thing. My wife, her favorite scene in the movie when we left was the Pomeranian scene.
Okay, see, and that was the problem I had. I had a huge problem with that scene.
I mean, it plays funny, but again, you're taking the piss out of Penny. But this is the thing. I think the ending plays differently to where I can understand that, right?
Sure.
Because for Richie, the comedy is a defense mechanism.
Right.
So it makes sense that he would constantly be laughing in the face of this absurd danger because that's just his fallback.
Right.
And again, I think in the end we'll get to they really lose the battle of wills versus the giant monster fight.
Right.
But I think there's a way to look at it where that still works. But again, like this is something I think about too with this. The movie actually starts very brutally, right? With the attacking of the gay couple. Mm-hmm. And what I liked is essentially you see that Derry and the atmosphere of Derry has created a new Bauer and gang.
Yeah.
Bowers and gang. So why do we need to go back if you're not going to really use it, right?
Right.
So I think I would have liked to have seen more work on showing this constant that Derry is essentially a farm of evil. Like new crops are constantly arising,
right.
And people aren't, aware of the evil or paying enough. There is a whole thing about the adults don't see what's happening. Mm-hmm. So, but that opening scene is so fucking unrelentingly brutal. It was hard to watch in the theater.
Totally, it's difficult because it's just one of those things. Like, it's not something It's not something any of us like think is the right thing about this world, but it is just the way things are. Like, people are horrible, people are hateful. But yeah, I think that though it speaks to the character of the movie itself, which is confronting the past in a cyclical nature. Like, that is the thing that I think is the most impressive part about the storytelling nature of this whole movie. Is where we're at in the story is that kind of everything that goes around comes around. And of course there's another Bowers game. And of course they're, fucking MAGA hat, dickhead, gay bashers, whatever. Like, they're
not MAGA hat, Meg Ryan hair, gay bash.
Sorry, Meg Ryan hair. I mispronounced Meg Ryan. Like it was that. It was Bev's situation. All of them have
for sure.
All of them have sort of run into this seen the cyclical nature of their lives. Like, we're getting to experience, like, when we meet everybody again. I think that's the thing I like the most is, as far as like, because I feel like we did this 3 times where we like repeat they're all separated, so we just repeat the thing over and over again.
Well, they do it in the intro. They do it when they're looking for their totems, and then once the fight starts, they break out.
They break out. So, like, their intros made sense. Like, I understand their intros, but all of them are sort of dealing with their cyclical nature of their lives. Like, Eddie is married to a woman who is pretty much his mother. And
I believe it's actually the same actress. I thought that was
really
cool.
Right? I think it is too, right? Yeah. So Eddie's married to a woman like his mother. Bev's dealing with the same abuse issues at home.
Yeah.
Mike's story is very fascinating to me. I wasn't quite sure. Like, his story is simply he has to stay. Like, I think that's a really fascinating. That's a really fascinating.
No, I think they built out on Mike of he kind of takes his grandfather's advice, right? That if you don't learn to take the reins and fight, you end up the sheep in the pen.
Right.
And Mike kind of, weirdly enough, did take that advice, right? Like, he's the guy who will not take a second off from trying to figure out how to beat Pennywise for almost 30 years. But what I like, too, because I've been reading a lot online that people were mad about this opening scene because of just the vulgarity of watching this couple get beaten down. What I think the scene does really well, and you hit on it perfectly, is what it's showing you is that we don't need a Pennywise to create evil.
Right.
Right? So we're watching this pure human nature evil. And then when the guy gets thrown off the river or whatever, Pennywise then appears and assaults him, almost as if the horrific nature of what we're generically capable of is too much to fathom. So then we have this generic boogeyman to try to explain it away. But Pennywise wasn't the one stomping these guys for nothing, just for being happy in someone else's vicinity who's not happy.
Right.
So there is this brutal fucking nature. Because me and my wife were cringing in our seats.
Oh, it's
horrible. And then you cut to a car accident, a suicide, a husband just beating the shit out of his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, we were sitting there. I was like, this is fucking intense. And for a movie that once we get to the clowns kind of starts playing it off and taking the scare away.
Yeah.
This opening scene is just real world, human on human brutality. And I think it really sets the stage for why would these people go back? And it's because everywhere they've been, they experienced evil.
Yeah.
At one point in their life, they were able to combat it and seemingly defeat evil incarnate.
Right.
That makes sense that perhaps they'd want to go back and, Even though they can't control husbands and, everything else, maybe they can do this one thing and save some innocent children.
Totally.
I think that opening, as brutal as it is, isn't just for shock value. I think it serves a really important point moving forward for the movie.
I think the point of the brutality of that opener is simply to set the tone of the movie itself, so that when we get back to Derry and when we start dealing with more like fantastic elements of these kids, like horrors themselves, it feels, and this is a weird way to put it, but it feels almost lighter in a way. Like we've seen the absolute worst of humanity at the beginning of this movie. So now moving forward, we can watch this movie and see like, oh, these are kids that are trying to grapple. These are people that are trying to grapple with their own humanity and grapple with the evil that is trying to overtake their town. But we all know full well that humans, some people are inherently evil themselves. So like there's more evil out there, but this is like concentrated into Derry. So we can work on the Derry problem first by basically, I don't know. It's such a fascinating, like the opener is so intense, and yet
you're so intense. You're actually getting off camera. You're just sliding forward. You're really into it.
Keep moving forward.
Hey. No, I see exactly what you're saying, though, because what I think this movie does, and it does make it slightly less scary, I think, as we get into Derry, but when you're an adult who has survived trauma, right, all the traumas now feel at arm's length. These people could all choose to run, which they seemingly do constantly.
Right.
They just never get out, but they can all leave, man. Like, they took their worst, and they're out. And even if bad things are still happening, the very fact that they've survived to adulthood makes it less scary than a child facing a monster.
Right.
Where you're like, I don't know if I'll ever see the next thing. They've already had a longish life.
Right.
So it keeps what I think this one does well, right, is the first movie functions a lot on the concept of fear in general. And no matter what form it takes, however silly it might seem to us as grown-ups or other people, it can scare the fuck out of you because the world is so new and big and expansive, right?
Right.
And as kids, we feel so fucking small and tiny.
Right.
This one does the opposite, where it's more focusing on this hollowed out nature of a human, right? Like we feel like now we have it all figured out, but we still can't get over what's happening in the past, right? They always say it's that the grand assumption is that if we could take our hearts away and just use our brains, we'd be like superhumans, right? Everything would be perfect. And then they find, once you get lobotomized and this and that, some people still can't function. It's a book I'm reading. It's no big deal. But what it is that we're all kind of driven by these emotions. So no matter what you do or what you achieve or how well you think you have it under control, sometimes you still are just a scared little child. So this one, the fear is not as pressing as the others because they're not the ones being hunted most of the movie.
Right. I mean, I think...
And all they're doing is running around and yelling at this one poor child in the town. That poor kid.
This poor kid who's just like getting every step of the way.
When he saw the clown, he was like, finally, Jesus, get me away from these fucking grown-ups who keep grabbing me and screaming in my face.
I mean, I feel like it's interesting because we get this like twofold. We get the opener and then Stanley's suicide, which, by the way, Andy Bean is an incredible actor, and I absolutely love it. He's in the Swamp Thing series on DC Universe, but he's just wonderful, man. In the like 5-minute span he's in this movie, he's so good. And like the true terror that probably one feels from something they can't, like, he's really kind of the only one who's truly remembering what happened. Like everyone else is like has this very hazy negotiated memory of like what it was. It feels like he understands what they're about to go back and do, which is why he does what he does. But again, like, it's so brutal and fascinating, though. And Andy
also
Bean
because we sit in his living room and see, like, this guy's got a really good life.
Really
like,
nice
he
life.
Seems truly happy.
They just booked a vacation. Like, they're living their best lives.
If there's one thing that would push me over the edge, it would be thinking of a vacation abroad. But
well, that's you.
I hate traveling, so that's me. No, I think this is what I mean. I love the actors in this movie, man. Mm-hmm. I just like spending time with them, and we can sit and argue is this scary enough? Is that? I don't think that's truly the point of the movie.
No, I don't think so.
Right,
either.
And I think it's all punching out its shadows.
Yeah.
Right, things that are there that we think are there stronger than they are, and they're not, and the way you baggage and hide your grief sometimes. I think the movie does an exceptional job at that, even as again, I feel like it's really overly long and kind of bloated, and there's too much of the kids and not enough of the adult losers.
Right.
When the adult losers get their shots, though, I think it's really good.
Yeah, they're all
also,
fantastic.
I did have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think the people that share the exact lot line with the Neibolt house are thinking?
Okay.
Like, I didn't realize this in the book. When you read it, you think of it like way out in the middle of nowhere by train tracks. I'm like, they have two neighbors that share a property line.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up, because and this is like one of those like you're in your 30s things you start looking at when because like we all want to progress in our lives in some way, and obviously I've been trying to look at like property and that kind of stuff, and I like as the house was collapsing in on itself, I was like, wait a second. This is a fucking neighborhood, and all the neighbors are just okay with this eyesore. Like, it's got to be bringing property value down by like at least $5,000. Like,
oh yeah. Well, not only that, just like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? You don't belong. No, because this is a real thing that happened. Last night, I was watching Total Recall to prepare for this month's theme. Right. Someone in our neighborhood decided they were going to light some fireworks off, like 15 fireworks. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was annoying. I was like, that's great. I'm trying to watch Cohagen over here, but that's cool. Interrupt my night, because you've had 3 Coors Lights. That's cool. Well, next thing you know, my phone starts blowing up that I have all these Facebook notifications. And we have a neighborhood Facebook group.
Yikes.
And so all the moms who have nothing to do, moms and dads who have nothing to do except for talk about like property values and shit.
Right.
They're super annoying. I'm like, you guys need better hobbies. We live in a world of wonders. Like, come on. No one needs to talk about neighborhood shit. Right. But they're like, did I miss a holiday? There's all this fucking fighting, and then someone's posting like the municipal codes on fireworks, and I was like, guys, do like me. Just watch Total Recall and have another beer. Like, calm the fuck down. But this is a real... But then I was like, imagine if Neibolt Street House was in my neighborhood.
Right.
These moms would be freaking the fuck out. That's all their whole lives would be, is how do we destroy this house? Again, I think in the story, it's the you can't see me. Adults can't see Pennywise and this and that. But it was one of those funny adult things where I was like, no way the neighborhood ladies who were, like on a Saturday night looking up municipal fire codes are going to let this house just stand.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. And again, obviously, I'm sure like to the outside world, it looks like a brand new house, whatever. Like, we are seeing what the losers see. So like, obviously it's the Neibolt house. It's terrifying. But again, it's just like one of those things where you see stuff like that and it creeps in. And you're like, hey, wait a second. There's not a neighborhood there's not a neighborhood in the world that would let that fucking place stand. Like, everyone would be like, knock that thing down. It's an eyesore. I don't want it in my neighborhood anymore.
Perceptions change, man. For my very short stint in stand-up comedy, I only had one joke that ever got laughs. And it was about how my porn habits changed once I moved in with my girlfriend. Because I was like, now you start looking around at like where they're fucking. And you're like, that guy can't afford this house, or the curtains don't even match the bedspread. Like, and I was like, oh great, living with my girlfriend's ruining my porn. But that was like my only joke that ever worked, was that my perceptions had shifted. And now I've done that as like an old guy who lives in a neighborhood.
Right.
But here's another thing about the movie that I think, again, whatever this movie is or isn't, I think Bill Skarsgård has placed himself in the all-time pantheon of amazing horror movie villains.
Absolutely.
And question. To me, the evidence I would submit is that scene with the little girl under the bleachers.
Oh, my God, yes.
That is one of my all-time favorite new Boogeyman scene ever. I think that scene is fucking brilliant. It's not iconic and as visceral as Georgie.
No.
But fuck. And this is the thing, too. In this one, Pennywise actually plays vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? It's the difference between how the Terminator acts in T1 versus T2. Right? Now he's like, oh, I'll draw you in with this vulnerability. That scene crushed my heart because also the girl had her little birthmark that everyone made fun of.
Uh-huh.
So she felt a little monstrous herself and was weakened. That scene is, but honestly, take everything else away. And again, a lot of Pennywise's scares devolve into this cartoonish, shit show.
Right.
That one, that's all-time brilliance.
Well,
that is masterful storytelling across the board.
It was absolutely wonderful, particularly because when the scene starts and the little girl's like, no, you're a stranger. I'm getting out of here. I'm scared. And I'm like, good for you, girl. All right, cool.
Yeah.
These kids from the 2000s are learning stranger danger. And then, but then, he like turns on the vulnerability and the charm. I'm like, wow, this scene in and of itself might be one of the more terrifying moments in the movie.
Absolutely.
It's a firefly leading the kid in, and then like relating to her on her level. And then just like, look, I hate the jump scares in this movie. I'm just going to put that out there. I absolutely hate them. Like This movie can be scary in and of itself.
I'm not a jump scare fan. I'm with you.
I don't either. Like that whole shit annoys the shit out of me. But I got to give it up for this one because that might be my favorite like lead on jump scare, which is you didn't count to 3 like that. Come on, man. I'll take that every day.
I'll throw that part out. I don't need to see her get bitten in the face.
No,
it's
I
just
don't
kind of
need
one
to
of
see
those
the girl
things to
get
me
eaten.
where I'm like, I didn't want to see that shot.
I didn't want to see that either. I don't like that.
But this gets back to what my mom said. There is an immense, overwhelming dread in that scene.
Yeah.
Because again, you're really rooting for this girl. Her parents don't seem to be interested in it. She's she's in mortal danger.
Right.
And you really sympathize with her that this girl is so bullied that she's like, well, I know what's going on, and that overrides her preservation.
Right.
I thought that scene alone, take out the last second of that scene, I mean, it's fucking flawless.
It's awesome.
It's so good. And that's what is so scary about Pennywise. And Skarsgård's performances, the other performance moment he has is when he's actually in his human form.
Yeah.
And he's putting on his makeup. It's so fucking terrifying the way he does this character. And again, I heard a great review of this, right? I think his name's John Squire. He runs Bloody Disgusting, or I think that's who he is. He's on Twitter.
Right.
Really good about his horror movie writing. Obviously, like a big name in the community that I can't remember. But he said that this movie reminded him of Andy Muschietti doing his version of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Yeah. Which the final marquee that we see is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, right. The Dream Child. No big deal. But what I like is there is this kind of playing around with the dream worlds and this and that. And I keep hearing it described as giant funhouse horror, right? That they set up these amazing set pieces that then we're doing like this game in, right? It becomes this funhouse game.
Right.
You know, like the one we saw from the trailer with the old lady. When she comes out as a giant, like, slender man with saggy tits and, like, a Junji Ito face, I was like, that's not scary to me. And also, like, Bev just runs away. That's how she beats it. She just walks away. So, again, that kind of stuff is not scary to me. But the Skarsgård where they just let him be Pennywise is fucking scary.
The Skarsgård's scary, and preceding that, though, the scary part with the old woman is when she's in the background and she pauses and then she walks away, like,
jittery.
That I was actually like, that's fucking scary. Like,
but
that
again,
actually.
That to me, it's that is one of those horror movie things that kind of bothers me a little bit. It's like, why is she there and what is she doing by jittering? Like, that's just something they add in.
Creepy shit. Why not? Give me some creepy shit.
But Pennywise's whole method of operation, period, is weird. It's, again, like, as we're going through all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, it's the same thing about when does Freddy just decide he needs to kill kids versus why is he keeping them alive for so... You know, sometimes it gets a little muddied.
Right.
This is how I feel with Pennywise. Like, dude, you only wake up once every 27 years. You should be eating more kids. Like, you show us in the floating scene there's like 50 kids.
Right.
And you show us when Bowers gets washed out that there's dead bodies everywhere. But I only see you getting like 3 kids a movie. Like... You should be a better hunter, right? Like, come on, man.
Well,
so I don't know. The funhouse horror stuff, it works for me sometimes. Other times, not as much. Like when Bill gets sucked into the sewer and all the little hands are out. The imagery of that is fantastic.
Yeah,
but it's also like he kind of gets away easily. So I don't know.
All
it's
of them
a hard
get
balance.
away from their. All of them get away from their respective like personal journeys and for finding their tokens pretty easily. Like.
Right. Well, it is this, why does Pennywise want them alive? He kind of talks about, I craved you. I dreamed of you. Yeah. And it's like, but for what? So they could come here and whoop your ass in a cave? Like, is that all? I didn't know also they were all CrossFit strong and could climb down that wet rock face. I watched that scene and I was like, I'd be dead.
Well, the only one who's in shape enough to do is definitely Ben. And Ben's, I mean, you know, Ben was great.
Yeah. Hunky Ben would definitely be like, hold my shirt. That's the most unbelievable scene is that Ben was never like, Bev, hold my shirt. I got to handle something.
The most unbelievable scene was as soon as Ben showed up and Bev wasn't just like, this is the alpha. I'm going to hang out with him.
Yeah. Like, or that little tiny guy.
Yeah, or we'll just hang out with tiny Bill Denbrough with his white hair and the white fluff in the front.
She saw glass and was like, oh, I know what's under there. Right? You want a Dimbro in the streets and a beast in the sheets. She knew what was under
I gotta
there.
tell you, I loved when they're in the Neibold house and they pull Ben's shirt up and he's getting like rebranded and all that shit.
Right.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. Like he's ripped. Like we all knew it.
On the sly though, that's one of the best ways to do the hunky guy shot.
100%. Like I was totally down for it.
I was way down with that. I was like,
Totally
yeah,
down,
dude.
It was great.
You hire this guy with the 12-pack? Like, that's a really good way to show it.
That's like the least gratuitous, like obnoxious way to show someone's six-pack off in a movie ever.
Right.
Like,
I like that too, man. I thought that was clever, man.
It was good.
I will tell you one of the like jump house scares that really got me though was Stanley's head spider.
oh my
That
god.
was just kind of vulgar and oh man. That one really got me though.
That was really gross. And I was not
Yeah,
prepared
but that's
for
what
it.
I mean though, right? If you really think about it, I don't think the biggest moments are scary, but I think there's a lot of scary shit in this movie.
Oh yeah, there's like scary little thing like that.
It bothers me that so many of my horror brethren are just, in general, washing this off as, there's nothing. Even me, I'm kind of playing it. I was like, it's not that scary. But it really is.
I don't think
it really is.
I don't think it's like overall like the scariest movie I've ever seen. What it is super creepy. Like,
but what I'm saying, it has deeply affecting moments, which to me is the most important thing a horror movie can do.
I'll tell you right now, the thing that indicates to me this movie is going to be one of those things I think about was the first thing that hatched out of one of those fucking fortune cookies was like a screaming baby, like, I don't know what it was, some sort of roach. Like a roach with a baby head that's screaming. Like, that's the grossest thing I've ever seen on television or movies. I never want to see that again.
You know what's weird? Rotten food stuff always gets me.
Yeah, this is disgusting.
It is like a true thing that just always works on me. Like,
that and like medical, like everything that Eddie had to go through for getting his token. That was disgusting. Like, even though it's all visual effects, like the leper thing will never not be gross to me.
The leper thing to me, I think the leper is actually like the poster child for the moments I don't like in it. I didn't like it in the first one. It's just kind of so cartoonish and silly. This one is baffling to me because Eddie's finally like starting to choke it, which becomes a big important element in the end, right? Like, I made him small to where I could choke him. Here's a baffling decision, right? Because you know these movies, a lot of people are making a lot of choices. The Thing then decides he's going to puke all over him in his mouth. Right? Pretty standard kind of sloppy body horse stuff.
Are you talking you're going to...
Why did they start playing that fucking song? Call me baby, call me angel.
Okay, I was actually wondering... I forgot to ask you before the show started because I thought it might have been a mistake and it was a miscue. And I was like...
oh, wait, are you saying this is like... Is that a sexy moment for him? Like, what are you saying in that moment? Right?
I honestly thought it was an accident and we had gotten like a weird cut of the movie. Like, well,
one, you're like, it's a song that's not super important to the time period. No need for a lyrical song there at all. In the lyrics, it's like, this is a love song about him getting puke in his mouth, and that's like his biggest fear. That moment to me,
but it was also like
stopped and I kind of looked around the theater like,
it was 7 seconds of the song. I didn't understand. I honestly thought it was a mistake.
That's one of those. It's like, I'm not a huge. I would be very interested to be. Please explain to me what happened there.
That would be my only question.
Why is that the moment?
Yeah, I want to know the reasoning.
That one totally pulled me out of the movie and the story, and I was just, what?
Yeah,
I was so fucking baffled when that happened.
I didn't understand. I swear to God, I thought it was a mistake on the cut, and I was like, oh, that's weird. That's kind of embarrassing. I wonder if anybody else saw that. Like, I wonder if any other.
It was
I
like
wonder
that
if any
and
other
Pennywise's tongue when he's
licking
licking glass, right? Like, those were the two moments I was like, oh, that's not good.
It was so weird. Like, I didn't understand it. Yeah, I really like. That's one of those things where I would not like. I don't give a shit normally, but I would actually like tweet to Andy Machete, be like, "Can you explain this real quick? I'm so
there
confused."
has to be some kind of inside joke that we didn't get.
Yeah,
right?
it's got.
There has to be a reason that was put there.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, just
and it's ruining a scare.
Well, right, like to be diegetic with that, and like also just plug it into the movie, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like it ends, and you're like, "All right, we're back to the score. Cool." Like I didn't understand it. Well,
that is truly
it was
baffling.
Very baffling.
Like more baffling than the property line dispute. But all right, so let's get to this ending.
Yeah.
What did you make of how they wrapped this beast up, right? Because again, we didn't have the Great Turtle. We don't have the Cosmic Journey. We do see that it has landed here millions of years ago, has lived in this area, comes out and feast every so often.
I mean, we get some.
What did you make of how the ritual of Chewed plays out for you?
You know, we get some deadlights and we get the ritual of Chewed. Like, there's. I'll say this: it was much more.
I would have liked more about the deadlights for me.
What's that?
I would have liked a little more on the deadlights.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
it's kind of one
requires
of
a little
those
more
great Stephen
explanation.
King things he does, where he gives you here's like a concept that's kind of open for you to fill.
Well,
I could have used a little more.
I think the thing I like the most about using those items, like that particularly, is like deadlights, for instance, is a thing that like is expansive all across like the Stephen King verse. Like, it's a huge deal in the Dark Tower series. Like, it's a big part of like there's aspects of like Pennywise and what he actually is, and the deadlights that is a much larger part of the Dark Tower and a couple other books that he's written. So.
It plays just like, The Shining.
Right.
What's happening with the old lady in the stand. Like, he does this great job of just creating these things.
I like that.
That are empty enough.
So to me, what it is like, this is what I like the most about the way Andy Muschietti chose to like write, like the way they chose to write this movie and the way he chose to direct it is, I actually like that we're not going to get like an over explanation of what it is, because honestly, it's like such deep cut Stephen King that I think.
Also, you're like, you already did that the entire second act,
right? Okay,
over explained everything.
Exactly. Like, I think he knew that by like the nearing the third hour of this movie, we can't go like, we've already separated these guys 3 times. We've already re-explained their origin stories 3 times. What we can't do is explain what the deadlights are and take like a 5-minute chunk out of this movie to like explain what's going on. We've already explained what the ritual of Chewed is, which honestly, I mean, I was not
barely explain,
right, but I was not even expecting them to explain like the name, let alone like like that. It's pretty impressive, like to throw that kind of stuff.
I honestly can't believe they left that in.
I couldn't either. I figured they'd change it, to be honest with you.
I knew they weren't going to do the like tying of tongues and shit like that, but I was like, even this, and I think the problem with this ending I have a little bit is, again, in the first one, when it's children facing down a big monster, right?
Right.
You have this, he's powered by their fear. If they're not afraid, that's how they can take on a monster. Because I know that was like a common critique of, they can just beat him with bats. It's like, well, you're not taking into account like the subtextual meanings of this fight.
Right.
I think this one has the same problem. When he's a giant kaiju Pennywise, and we see him just gut Eddie, right?
Yeah.
So we know that he can kill, and pretty easily. It is this, because if you look at it only as this is happening in their mind, right? Like, once they do the ritual and get his deadlights in the, tube, whatever the fuck that thing was.
Right.
The bladder. And they put the lid on. This is the start of the ritual, and now this is all kind of metaphysical, right?
Right.
Where none of this is truly happening in physical form, which makes sense as they're going through their various different tunnels and this and that. Because it focuses, again, on this is the battle of wills. Right? That this is all a mental fight. And again, that's how they have to beat him at the end, is they're just shouting him down, right? Making him seem silly and foolish.
Right.
And I think that part works really well. I don't know that they did a great job of editing this sequence to focus on the metaphysical part of the battle, because it is one of those. It feels like it's all very real world.
I mean, there's a lot of just physicality to it, and again, like, I feel like editing.
Right, and if you take it away from that and just make it, it's like this is a battle of the minds taking place in, like, again, a Nightmare on Elm Street type world.
Right.
Then it works well. If this is actually a giant crab, they're all in their 40s. Like, they're not able to roll around on rocks enough. Someone's gonna sprain a knee and be like, ah. And they're dead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just such a hard, like, can you imagine like getting to the end of this movie and we had just gotten through like, yes, the metaphysical fight of the end of this film was quite like that to me.
But I think that's what we got. It just plays really physically.
It's just very real world. But like ultimately, again, like,
and to be fair, I don't know that you can do it better. Like, that ending is fucking insane.
No, it's crazy. Again, like, the fact that we got the things we got from the book, like, the things that were, like, metaphysical and also just kind of, like, weird. I think that was...
If your kid starts floating, that's going to be the best YouTube video.
I know.
Not for you.
Not for me, but yeah, like, ultimately, I think the thing that is weird, the things that are weird to me, for instance, about, like, from the book adapting... Right. worked very well in a movie form. I'm glad they left out some of the weirder aspects, like not explaining what Pennywise is, other than just saying like he's from space. Probably was, I would say, probably a modicum of disservice. Like I would have said a little bit more, but it's also
I never liked that either. I kind of like him as this generic ghost boogeyman figure.
It's strange to me. Like that is a very strange aspect of like what it is like, so he's like concretely something else entirely. Like he's not this aspect of our imagination that preys on our
also
fear.
does, it's like if you're a shape-shifting murder clown, there are about 1 million better things you could choose to shift into to kill things.
Yeah.
Like we see when he's fighting the Native Americans in that cartoon sequence, right? That very Steppenwolf sequence. It's like he was like a giant minotaur.
Yeah.
Like that's a better version to kill people.
Way
like
better.
A giant minotaur with an axe.
Absolutely.
Than, a mummy.
No, totally. Yeah.
But, again, this is, and they all kind of have to go through their individual journeys to find out. I did think it was funny that Richie and Eddie had to face down the closet. I was like, wow, you're really nailing in this this subtext right now.
Wow, it was something else, man. Like,
the unrequited gay love story where they open a closet that's full of a Pomeranian handbag dog. I was like, wow, come on, guys.
Yeah, it was very on the nose. But again, like that was something.
But I love that.
I really liked that addition to the story, though. Like,
well, we'll get to that in a minute when they do their Return of the King endings.
Oh god.
But for this one, again, they all go through their little personal battles.
Right.
And then they come out and they have to fight. Again, I don't know why everyone's just cool with Mike, the liar. It's like, hey, man, way to not be.
Mike
that happens
the
4 times in the movie, and then at the end, it's just like, we're best friends. We love each other.
Like,
Again, it's hard to wrap this thing up. I think they lose some of the metaphysical and are too physical. But that final image is fucking glorious.
yeah.
Pennywise, where he's kind of like the melted little version of himself, watching his heart explode. Mm-hmm. I mean, that image is fucking. It's just
good.
one of those kind of grotesque but fascinating images. I thought that was cool, man. For an impossible to land ending, it's kind of like the Watchmen ending, right? When they were doing that,
yeah.
And you're like, how are you doing the space squid bomb?
Right.
They did a really good job.
I think for ending a movie without having to like look. This book is like, what is it, 1,500 pages? Like, this is a long...
1,200?
Yeah, like, this is a 1,200-page book. Like, Stephen King had a lot of room to breathe in this thing. This is, unfortunately, 3 hours long, but at the same time, like... And I was actually talking... One of my friends is a huge Stephen King fan, and I'm like, this movie's 3 fucking hours long. He goes, that's it? There's so much to cover. I'm like, oh, God.
But this is one of those, just because it's in the book, you're in a different medium now. Time to axe.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's exactly what I think
hour and a half out of this
did.
movie.
But yeah,
easily.
taking it to the logical conclusion that they did, which, like, might feel like, look, I can see maybe where some people might feel it's a little anticlimactic. Like, you get to the end, and you're like, oh, wow, it just, like, ends, like, he's just, like, a deflated little balloon, and then they crush his heart. And I'm like, that's an important thing, man. Like,
but the image is glorious.
It's amazing imagery.
It's this movie has a lot of parallels to Nightmare on Elm Street. Every single time one time they beat Freddy just by showing him a reflection in a mirror.
Right.
And you're like, well, that sucks. But then the imagery of his body separating and ripping himself apart is awesome.
It's great.
And it's like, it's really hard to end these kind of bigger mental monsters, right? This isn't an actual, like, brutal fight to the death. This is a battle of minds and wills, man. And again, I think they did as good as possible. And then you jump to Bill Hader, who just fucking seals it.
Oh, my God.
Because, again, what this movie does well is where it kind of fails in some of the big funhouse stuff to me, I start being less interested. The humanity of this movie is a deep, deep well that I would float in any day.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader holding Eddie is just so fucking brutal. Like, the brutality of that scene. And then we find out when he puts, R plus E on the bridge, that he's loved this guy for a long time, right?
Yeah.
It's really one of those things that pays off in a sequel from an original movie. I thought that was lovely, man. I really, and I could have gotten rid of all the other Lord of the Rings endings.
I thought it was...
them on a boat. And again, so much voiceover. So much voiceover that we don't need. But that moment with Hader, when we realize he loved Eddie, right?
I think the thing I loved the most about that...
Brilliant.
The thing I love the most about that is we get to that, like, it's after he's, like, hit by the deadlights, too. Like,
yeah.
And then they like,
and Eddie thinks he saves them,
right?
And then
like,
oh,
I like
man.
that whole, I like that
It's a good
sequence, and I'm even okay with them all like jumping into the water together, because then you get to see Hader like have this really lovely moment. Like we get to see him.
That was beautiful, man. I love that scene.
It's so beautiful. Like
I was trying to figure out. I was like, is this they're still in the fight and Pennywise is coming out of the water?
Oh man, it was. Just
and honestly, like just a hug was like a massive payoff.
It was so good. Yeah, and then
It's
of course we got
beautiful,
the 5. You know, we got the 5 endings, but.
Right, we don't need Mike. We don't need Bills. We don't need them on a boat. Like, you guys are all rich. We get
We
it.
all
You're
know
rich
Bev
white
and Ben
people,
are going to
it'll
be great. Like, they're rich. They're great. Like, life is wonderful.
It's cool, man. But no, but that hug, though, is everything to me. Like, that's the stuff that is great. And again, I think it's that heart and these characters. I was telling my wife, that's what these movies, I like this group of characters more than probably any horror movie I can ever think of. I love them. I root for them. I want them all to be okay. And that almost never happens in horror movies,
no.
right? Like most of them are either like they're teenage archetypes or they're people with flaws, whatever. I really love this group of characters, and I just like spending time with them. And I'm more invested in them, even if it's a little less as adults than, you normally are in a horror movie. And that is a really exceptional thing.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I
loved
think
it, man.
ultimately this movie ends about as well as you can end a movie like this. Especially a movie,
I think
that's a
you
sequel
could cut
to
a bunch out. Oh, yeah, especially for a sequel, right? Yeah. But, yeah, you could cut a lot out. I wish they focused more on the adults. I wish Bowers was better. I wish there were scenes that weren't as cartoonish in their scares. I wish that Call Me Baby song wasn't in there. But overall, right, like it's easy for someone to make a 3-hour movie and for us to find nitpicks, right?
Yeah.
What this movie is horror on the highest level of production, scale, size, unbelievably talented artist in every aspect, giving us really good performances, really terrifying and in-depth moments. I mean, the way they build tension. Pennywise is an all-time, like he's in my top 5 favorite horror movie boogeyman villains of all time, easily.
For sure.
The good so dramatically outweighs the bad.
Agreed.
Again, if you're one of those people that just wants to try to score like nerd points by, oh, I got him, you can. This is a movie you could do that, but why?
It's as good a movie as you're going to get for a sequel to another horror movie. Like, especially for something this epic and this large. I mean, that's
true. Where would you rank this in horror movie sequels?
Oh, I mean, I'd say as far as sequels go, I don't know how many sequels I've seen of horror movies, but
well, like of part 2s, right? It's better than Friday. It's better than Halloween. It's better than Nightmare. It's better than Candyman 2. It's better than Child's Play 2. It's way better than Hellraiser 2. This might be the greatest number 2 in a horror series of all time. I'm just saying.
It's very possible this is the deuce you don't want to drop, guys. That's for sure.
Demons 2 is pretty good. Now, I could be here all day doing this game. But it's up there. It's fucking up there.
It is. It's good.
Just appreciate, man. We never get to see horror movies this size.
No.
Like, even The Conjuring is a big studio WB movie. Feels so much smaller than this.
They didn't market the shit out of The Conjuring the way they do this.
Yeah, enjoy it, man. This is a really good time at the movies. Which people are always like, it's not, it's so sad. Yeah, it's fucking sad, man. Sometimes it's cool to go to a movie and be sad and scared. There are other emotions other than giggles. You know,
that's
like,
true.
I don't know. As a guy who watched a lot of horror movies, I'm always impressed that we get these movies, period, when they come to theaters this big. And I don't know that they've ever really been this big, man. And, I thought it was a fascinating, good time, warts and all.
Totally. I would absolutely watch it again with if my wife was willing to watch it, I'd watch it again.
Oh yeah, well I did that with It, where I was like, anyone who hadn't seen, I'm like, guys, we should watch this right now. Maybe not this one because it's 3 hours. There will probably be some scene skipping, but I mean, it's fun, man. We should be appreciative that we're getting this version of this movie. I think.
Agreed.
That's it, guys, for It Chapter 2. I hope you all went to the theater to see it. I really, truly do. We didn't say spoilers. I guess we can say it now. Again, if you're listening to It Chapter 2, you have to assume there are spoilers. That's on you.
Yeah.
Rate, review, guys, wherever you find the show. Share us with your friends. We do appreciate it. This month, the pod questions reality. So, for sure, we have Total Recall, Dark City, and Black Swan. We'll see what else we got time for, but those 3 for sure. Guys, and also brush up on your Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th because you're getting drowned in horror movies next month in October. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffin.
I'm Alex Dandino.
Let's float, guys. Let's just float.